أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على الإمام الهدى والمتقين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Alhamdulillah, we are in this blessed month of Rajab, and like many months within the Islamic calendar, there are certain significant events or certain significant dates that occur. Whether it's Ramadan or whether it's Dhul-Hijjah, Muharram, etc. There are certain events that have taken place in these months, or there are certain dates where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed certain ibadat. And these months are given that significance because of what has either occurred or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed for us in terms of our ibadat. So in the month of Rajab, there are at least 4 events that have taken place that have had a significant impact on our Islamic history. Those events continue to have an impact even till today. And I'm going to go through a few of these events, and we'll focus on 2 of these events, which I'll try and put most of my attention on. The first thing that happened of significance in the month of Rajab is Isra wal Mi'raj. It is where Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is taken on this journey to Masjid Al-Aqsa, and from there to the heavens to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll focus on this as we move on through this lecture. The second event that took place in the month of Rajab is the Battle of Tabuk. And in this Battle of Tabuk, this is where Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam leads an army to meet the Romans. This happens in the 9th year after Hijri. This is the first time when Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is leading an army outside of Arabia. This is where Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is leading the Muslims to open the doors to Sham. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam leads this army. Some from the books of Sirah, they say there were about 30,000 troops that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was leading towards Sham. And when the Romans hear that such a big number of troops are coming, and it is being led by Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, they get scared, and the troops that were stationed, the Roman troops that were stationed in Tabuk, they leave back into the inner parts of the Sham. So a battle between the Sahaba and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Romans does not take place. However, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stays in Tabuk for a month, and there are a little bit of skirmishes that happen between some of the people who resisted, and eventually Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he fights off these small little skirmishes and forces, and the control of that area comes under the rule of Islam. He makes treaties with some of the governors that were appointed by the Romans, and they start paying jizya to the Islamic State. So this event of Tabuk that took place in Rajab, it was the doors that opened up the expansion of Islam into Sham, and then later on in towards the Persian regions and so on and so forth. So that event is where Islam spreads out of Arabia. From here onwards, Islam spreads out of Arabia and goes towards the rest of the world. And then we see Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam sending Usama bin Zayd later on, and Abu Bakr sending Khalid bin Walid, and so on and so forth. The third event that takes place is the liberation of Jerusalem at the hands of Salahuddin Ayyubi. That also happens in Rajab. Right? This is where Umar ibn Khattab, right? Umar ibn Khattab is the one who conquers Jerusalem, who opens the gates of Jerusalem, who brings Jerusalem and Masjid Al-Aqsa under the fold of Islam, under the cover and the rule of Islam. And centuries later, we see that the Crusaders, they occupied Jerusalem. And they occupied Jerusalem for about 100 years. And then eventually Salahuddin Ayyubi is able to liberate Jerusalem from the Crusaders. And he enters Jerusalem and opens the doors back to Jerusalem and brings Jerusalem back under the fold of Islam in the month of Rajab. And before this, the famous Battle of Hittin took place. Just a brief history there, I'm not going to go into all those details. But this important event of conquering Jerusalem that Umar ibn Khattab opened the gates to happened in the month of Rajab. And finally, the fourth event is the destruction of the Khilafah, which happened on the 28th of Rajab, which corresponds to the 3rd of March 1924. This event continues to have an effect in today's time. This is where the rule of Islam that was implemented by the Uthmani Khilafah was taken away. The rule of Islam was abolished. So we have all these four events: Isra al-Mi'raj, the Battle of Tabuk, the liberation of Jerusalem by Salahuddin Ayyubi, and then eventually the last major event, which was the fall of the Uthmani Khilafah, or the abolishment of the Uthmani Khilafah in the month of Rajab. And all these events, they are related to the issue of Jerusalem. The fall of the Khilafah, it has a bit of a relation, but it still considers when the armies of Allenby and the British and the French, they conquered, they marched through the lands of Jerusalem in 1917 after they conquered the Muslim lands. This all has a relation to the issue of Jerusalem itself. Isra al-Mi'raj, the Battle of Tabuk, or Sham in general, Salahuddin's liberation of Jerusalem, and then eventually the fall of the Khilafah. So I'll spend the most of the next few minutes on the issue of Isra al-Mi'raj, and then finally on the issue of the Khilafah being abolished and the liberation of Jerusalem again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Isra, He says, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده الليل من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. This is the first ayah of Surah Al-Isra. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that Subhan al-Ladhi, right? Glorified and exalted is He, the Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who took His slave, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on a night journey. بِعَبْدِهِ لَيْلًا مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ الْأَقْصَى, right? On a night journey from Masjid al-Haram, from Makkah to Jerusalem. Jerusalem, or the furthest mosque, whose surroundings are blessed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is emphasizing that this is a land whose surroundings are blessed, so that He may show him, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some of His signs. And Allah says, and He ends this ayah by saying that He is indeed all hearing and all seeing. If you look at just this ayah of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this, He says, look, He is the one who can do this. Right? He says, Subhanalladhi asra. That He is the most glorified, the most exalted, that has taken His slave on a night journey. Now, the Mufassirin on this, they say that, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's emphasizing here that He is the glorified one. So nobody can say that, how did He, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, go on this journey? Because Allah, it is within Allah's power to allow His slave, His servant, to go from point A to point B in a blink of an eye. Because He is the Rabb. Secondly, the Mufassirin also say that, look, there is an indication here in this ayah that this is not where this is a dream that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is having. This is not a vision that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is having about this journey. They say that the way it is written is that it was a physical journey, a physical act where Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taken on buraq, the animal, which is not like a donkey nor a mule, a white beast that is described in the hadith, that was Jibreel came to him and took him. So it's a physical journey of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Makkah to Jerusalem and then up to the heavens, where he physically is seeing the events that have occurred there. He's physically there and meeting with the Anbiya and so on and so forth. So a few lessons that we can learn from this. The event of Isra al-Mi'raj, if you want to understand it properly, you have to understand the context in which this event occurred. The context is that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in a state of sadness. Because just before this Isra al-Mi'raj occurred, the Mufassirin, they say that, look, this happened either a year before the Hijrah or a year and a half before the Hijrah. But before this, it was Yawm al-Huzn, right? The year of sorrow, where significant events happened to Rasulullah and he was in a dire state. He was in a state where in the situation of Rasulullah in constant conflict with the Quraysh, in constant conflict with the Kuffar, and there are certain personal events that happened to him that caused him some sadness. Number one was Abu Talib, he passes away. And this really hurt Rasulullah because Abu Talib, he was basically his father figure. He was his uncle, but he was really his father figure because he raised him from a very young age. He protected him from the Quraysh, and Abu Talib, he dies on kufr. He does not become a Muslim, right? He dies on disbelief. And secondly, because of that, his death, the protection that he had against the Quraysh goes away, right? The support that he gave Rasulullah against the Quraysh is no longer there. And his uncle, his beloved uncle, passes away as a non-Muslim. The second, right after this, Khadija radiallahu anha, she passes away. His beloved wife. His wife that took care of him from the minute he got the wahi till the very end where she passes away. She was his support. She was his pillar. So even she passes away. She was the mother of his children. She passes away. So Rasulullah within a short period of time, he loses two people that were very close to him. His uncle and his wife. A third event also happens. He goes to Taif to seek nusra, to seek support. Because there was nothing budging from the Quraysh. Nobody was giving him any sort of support. Life was being, they were under torture. The Sahaba were being persecuted. He was being called a liar and so on and so forth. So he goes to Taif to seek support, to seek the nusra. And we all know this, of the situation of Rasulullah in Taif. Right? He gets rejected. And not just rejected, he gets kicked out of the city by a mob of people throwing stones at him. And he gets all bloodied. And he gets so bloodied that his sandals are soaked in blood. This was the state of Rasulullah, where you have his uncle passing away, his wife passing away, and this rejection, this abject rejection from even the Quraysh as well as now the people of Taif. This is the situation he is in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes him on this mission, on this journey of Isra wal Miraj. This was to give Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam strength. Right? This was to give Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam strength, to give him a good bashara, to give him that Allah is his support, right? To remind Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, right? This was the hardship that he was going through, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings him, to his Rabb. Think about that, imagine that. To comfort him. Allah Azza wa Jal brings his slave to him, to comfort him, to give him glad tidings, to tell him there is bashara, there is, your mission is not done yet. There is light at the end of the tunnel. That is an amazing fact. But Allah Azza wa Jal, He brings His own creation into His presence. And He gives him, we all know this, I mean, I'll go into this a little bit about, he meets the Sahaba, he meets the Anbiya, the issue of the Salah, and all of that stuff. Right? So the point here, the lesson to be learned here is that there was, in this dire situation, in this hardship, Allah Azza wa Jal gives you ease. Right? That is the lesson to be learned from this Isra al-Miraj. And I'm not going there's in the hadith, there's a whole discussion of what Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw, who he met, and all of that stuff. I'm not going to go into details on that. But what I want to point out is only a few aspects. So that was that aspect, which is that there was ease after some hardship. The second lesson to be learned is the situation of the society when Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes back. Right? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, after he comes back from the journey, after he comes back, after leading the Anbiya in Salah in Masjid Al-Aqsa, he comes back and what does he do? He doesn't hide the fact that he was taken on this journey. He actually publicizes it. He goes to the Kaaba, in front of the Kaaba, and he declares it to the people that, look, overnight I went to Jerusalem and then from there I went up to the heavens. Now think about that. The reaction of the people. The people said, this is it. Khalas, that's it. He's a liar. Na'uz billah. This is it. This cannot happen. That this man is now telling me, telling us, telling the society that he has taken this journey overnight to Jerusalem and then to the heavens. This is too much. We can't believe in this now. These are fairy tales. That's why the Mufassirin, they emphasize that, saying, look, the ayahs is mentioning Subhanallah, because Allah is so glorified, He can do whatever He wants with His slave. Right? Because the people rejected it. And the Mufassirin, they say, look, it was a physical journey. It was not a dream, it was not a vision or anything of that sort. It was a physical journey. So because the people rejected it. And Allah is emphasizing this is a true thing. So now Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is mentioning this to the society. The society naturally is rejecting it. They've rejected the Quran and all of that stuff, but now they're saying this is our weapon. This is it. There is no more ifs and buts. This is now falsehood. Because of this, some Muslims became murtad. They went back to kufr. Right? Some of the Muslims, because of this, they went back to kufr. Now, this is a weapon to be used. This incident for the kuffar became a weapon to be used against Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They go to Abu Bakr. In some narrations it says Abu Jahl goes to Abu Bakr, and in other narrations it says that some of the people who were in that discussion in front of the Kaaba, it included Abu Jahl as well, but some people went to Abu Bakr to tell him what happened. So regardless of what narration you take, but Abu Bakr, the people come to Abu Bakr, or Abu Jahl himself goes to Abu Bakr to tell him, look what your friend is saying now. He's saying that overnight he went to Jerusalem and up into the heavens and he met with Allah and now he's back. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and this is the lesson to be learned here. Look at what Abu Bakr radiallahu anh's response was. He says, by Allah, if he actually said that, he has told the truth, or he said the haqq. There really is nothing to be amazed about, for he has told me that he gets wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the sky to the earth in an instant during the night or the day, and I believe him. And that is more strange than what you just said. So here Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, see his response. Initially he says, if what you say is actually true, then this is truth because it is coming from Allah, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He is verifying the information that he's getting. He's not just jumping on the bandwagon, right? Like the other people did. He's not jumping on the bandwagon and leaving Islam. Na'uz billah, right? He's verifying the message that was given to him. The point is, in how do you relate this to ourselves right here? The media lies. The media lies. Blatant lies. In a society where you have conflicts between Islam and kufr, in a society where you're dominated by kufr ideas, the media lies. The ideas that you learn in society, they are falsehood. The media reiterates that. So we have made a mistake. As Muslims, we see this. We make mistakes on jumping on these bandwagons and using labels and all of that stuff. And later on, we find out that this was all a lie. So here, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh is first verifying the information that is being told to him. Because the Quraysh have lied. The Quraysh have rejected. It is in their favor to reject this message of Islam. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he verifies this and he says, look, I still believe in him because I believe the wahi is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already. That he is getting wahi. I believe he's a messenger. So whatever he says, I take. The lesson here is yaqeen in the aqeedah of Islam. Yaqeen in the message of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yaqeen in these ayahs that talk about Isra wal Mi'raj. Right? To not doubt them because you have already intellectually accepted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb, and through intellectual proof you've also accepted that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So hence whatever comes in the book or whatever is mentioned by Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you believe in it. The issue of Iman is important. With issues like these, unfortunately sometimes we get confused. The youth may get confused about certain events that they're not understanding because it is beyond your mental capacity. And in such circumstances where the mind has a limit, so you believe in the text because originally you believed in the Quran. I hope that makes sense. Right? Finally, this is where I'll spend a little bit more time. The significance of Masjid Al-Aqsa, the significance of Jerusalem, of Bayt al-Maqdis, of Sham, the fall of the Khilafah, and its eventual liberation. Imam Ahmad, he reported a hadith from Anas ibn Malik that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, Al-Buraq was brought to me, and it was a white animal, bigger than a donkey and smaller than a mule. One stride of this creature covered a distance as far as it could. It rode on it, and it took me, I rode on it, and it took me to Bayt al-Maqdis, which is Jerusalem, where I tethered it at the hitching post of the prophets. In another narration that's mentioned in Muslim, it says that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered Masjid Al-Aqsa and prayed 2 rakats there. The point of mentioning this hadith, this is part of a long hadith that describes the whole events, is that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to Masjid Al-Aqsa, so goes to Jerusalem, to Bayt al-Maqdis, on this beast, on this animal, that all we know of is like it's smaller, it's bigger than a donkey, but smaller than a mule. It's completely abiyad, it's white, and it can go on a very high speed that we can't imagine. And anyhow, he reaches there and he tethers his animal to the hitching post of the prophets. Meaning that every prophet, and there's other hadith that talk about that the prophets visited Jerusalem. And there is a post on which all the prophets hitched their horse, animal, whatever they came up with. That is a location where all the prophets did this. And he's emphasizing that this Masjid Al-Aqsa is where the prophets visited. So the Masjid Al-Aqsa, the Jerusalem, this land of Sham, it has a value in our iman because it is part of our aqeedah. It is mentioned in the Quran. There are many ahadith, and I'll go through some of this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from here obviously we know that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's taken up to the heavens where he meets all the Anbiya. He meets Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Yusuf and so on, and Adam alayhi salam. He meets Ibrahim alayhi salam at Bayt al-Ma'mur, which is the Kaaba in the heavens. He meets with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He sees hell and heaven, right? He sees people in the heavens and in the hell. There's narrations of the hairdresser of Pharaoh's daughter, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of these hadith out there, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned from them. And finally, we see the discussion between Musa alayhi salam and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the issue of salah, and then eventually Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he doesn't go and go back and reduce the salah with Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal decreased the 5 salah. So this is where the official 5 salahs happen. Um, sorry, I lost my page here. Another hadith. Imam Muslim, he narrates from Abu Dharr saying that I asked Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam which was the first mosque, which was the first masjid on earth. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he replies, it was the Kaaba. And then he said, which was the second masjid, what was next? So Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says it is Masjid Al-Aqsa. And then Abu Dharr, he inquires again and he asks, what is the time difference? What is the span between the two masajids? And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says 40 years. So the Kaaba was built, and 40 years later, the Masjid Al-Aqsa was built. Another hadith, Maymuna bint Sa'd radiallahu anha, she relates that she asked the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, O Messenger of Allah, inform us about Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem. He said, visit it for salah, visit it for prayer. And she asked again, if one is not able to visit it, what should we do? So Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, if you cannot go for salah, you cannot visit Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, then send some oil to be used for its lamps. This will be as if you've prayed in Masjid Al-Aqsa, in Bayt al-Maqdis. Think about that hadith a little bit. Here Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he's advising us, he's encouraging us to go visit Masjid Al-Aqsa, go visit Jerusalem. But even if you can't, at least send some oil to light up the lamps in Jerusalem, right? This is what the significance is that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is teaching us. That this is something that you have to care about. This is the third holiest place for us. It is not something that we say, it's occupied, let it be occupied. It's occupied, it's not my business anymore. Here at Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, even if you can send oil to light its lamps, then do so. Right? And there's other hadith that talk about the reward of praying in Masjid Al-Aqsa and so forth. Another hadith, Zayd ibn Thabit, he reports that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, how blessed is Asham. The companions radiallahu anhuma asked, why is that? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied, I see the angels of Allah spreading their wings over Asham. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he added, and the prophets lived therein. There is not a single inch in Al-Quds, in Jerusalem, where a prophet has not prayed or an angel has not stood. Subhanallah. This is the land of the prophets. This is the land of the angels. This is the land that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has emphasized. This is the land where Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about in His book. This is Jerusalem, Masjid Al-Aqsa, and Asham. Right? The prophets, all the prophets, came to this land to pray in Masjid Al-Aqsa. And this Masjid Al-Aqsa was opened, this Jerusalem, this land of Asham was opened by Umar ibn Khattab. It came under the rule of Islam. Centuries later, it got occupied by the Crusaders. Salahuddin Ayyubi liberated it in Rajab. And yet again, we lose it. And it is under the occupation of the Israelis and the Western nations. It is awaiting its liberation. It is awaiting its liberation. When the Khilafah was destroyed, there was no one to protect this land anymore. So the event of the destruction of the Khilafah on the 28th of Rajab, 1342 after Hijri, which corresponds to 3rd March 1924, was not just about a protection that was gone for Jerusalem, but it was a protection, it was the rule of Islam that has been nullified or been taken away for the whole of the Ummah. That is a significant event because we no longer have the system that ruled Masjid Al-Aqsa, the Kaaba, or Medina Munawwara, or protected the Ummah in general. Sultan Abdul Hamid, one of the last khulafa, one of the last khalifas, it's an interesting quote, and I think it has a lot of value to understand the immense nature of this event. He says, while I'm alive, I would rather push a sword into my body than see the land of Asham, the land of Palestine, cut and given away from the Islamic Khilafah. He's responding because Theodor Herzl, the founder of the Zionist movement, is wanting to pay money for Jerusalem. So he goes on, he says, I will not sell a single inch of this blessed land because it is not mine. It belongs to the Muslim Ummah. We have paid for this with our blood. Let the Jews, the Zionists, keep their millions. If the Khilafah is destroyed, they can have Palestine, Jerusalem for free. Think about that. The vision of Sultan Abdul Hamid, the statement he just made. He says, this is a land of Jerusalem that the Ummah has shed blood for. The Ummah has protected. The Ummah has ruled it with Islam. It's a land that belongs to the Muslims, to be protected, to be ruled by the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else. To be under the protection of Allah, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that the salah and the ibadat and the rule that happen in Masjid Al-Aqsa is under the banner of Islam. He says, I will not sell an inch. Now we have deals being made to sell off everything. We'll have big buildings and businesses and God knows what. The whole of Masjid Al-Aqsa is being sold out. The whole of Jerusalem is being sold. The whole of the lands of Sham are sold. The deal of the century, quote unquote. Here Sultan Abdul Hamid, he's saying, I will rather kill myself, I would rather put a sword through my blood, I would rather cut my flesh than sell an inch. And he says, if the Khilafah is destroyed, you can have it for free. Literally, that's what's happening. The Khilafah is not there to protect the Ummah. We are being sold off. We have no say in the matter at all. Trump and Netanyahu sitting together, the Western nations, the rulers, they sit together, they make these deals, and that's it. You have no say. You will be just put into concentration camps, put in a corner. We will make Jerusalem our capital. Right? We will massacre millions in Syria. We'll massacre millions in Iraq, but no one to protect. No one to uphold the hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the Khilafah is not there. All of the problems that we see in our societies today is because the rule of Islam that is implemented, the Khilafah is not there. And this is not an issue of politics, quote unquote, only. This is an issue of your aqidah. This is an issue where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mandated us to be ruled under Islam. This is an issue where we believe in this. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, إِنَّمَا الْإِمَامُ جُنَّةٌ يُقَاتِلُهُ مِنْ وَرَائِهِ وَيُتَّقَى بِهِ. Right? That the Imam, the Khalifa, he is a shield behind whom the Muslims will fight and behind whom they are protected. It's a shield. If that shield does not exist, if that shield is not there, there is no protection and there is no way to fight off aggression. That shield doesn't exist today. This is where now we can speak about the liberation of Jerusalem, the liberation of Palestine, the liberation of our lands. Just like how Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in this dire state, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him on this mission, on this journey of Isra al-Miraj, there are glad tidings for us as well. We are in a dire state. We are in a situation where there's sadness and oppression and corruption, families being destroyed, millions being killed, lands being occupied, millions of refugees treated like cattle. SubhanAllah, I saw these pictures today from about the Syrian Muslims being stripped down to their underwear and beaten at the borders of Turkey and Greece. Wallah, it should give us tears in our eyes to think about the situation. These are men. Think about what is happening to our women and our children. The images that we see, these images cannot desensitize us anymore. We cannot get used to these images. The situation of the ummah requires a solution. And that solution is the return of the Khilafah. Ibn Asakir, he narrates from Masira bin Jalis, where he heard the Messenger ﷺ, he says, this matter, the Khilafah, will continue after me in Al-Madinah. Then move to Ash-Sham. Then to the Hijaz, the peninsula. Then to Iraq. Then to the city. The city here means Constantinople, Istanbul. Then to Bayt al-Maqdis. So if it reaches Bayt al-Maqdis, then it would have reached its natural resting position, natural resting place. And no people who remove it from their land will ever get it back again. Meaning, meaning that once the capital has moved from one place to the other, it will never go back to its location. So we know this from our history, that the center of the Khilafah was initially in Medina, and then goes to Asham, and then from there comes back again to the Hijaz, then Baghdad, Iraq, and the final seat was in Istanbul, was in Constantinople. What is remaining is the last part, then to Bayt al-Maqdis, then to Jerusalem. So that means there is this bashara still left. There is this prophecy that's still left, that the state will come back and will have its seat in Bayt al-Maqdis, in Jerusalem. Another hadith, it's also mentioned by Ibn Asakir from Abdurrahman bin Abi Umayra al-Muzni, who said that he heard the Messenger ﷺ, there will be in Bayt al-Maqdis a rightly guided bay'ah. Another narration, Al-Hakim, which has been classified as Sahih, he narrates from Abi Shahira. He says, I've heard those who say that there will be 12 banners, and under each banner 12,000 men. And the Muslims will gather with their Imam in Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem al-Quds. Another narration, this is reported in Ibn Hibban, and he in his Sahih Hadith, that Asham will be the base of the land of the believers at the end of time. So he says, on the authority of An-Nawas bin Saman, who heard that the Messenger ﷺ said, the Uqr, the natural resting place, or the center, the Uqr of the land of the believers is Asham. By the way, Asham includes Palestine, Jerusalem, the whole area of Palestine. It includes Jordan, it includes Syria, and parts of Iraq. That whole area is considered Asham. So I have, where is this? So the Uqr, the center, the core of the land of the believers is Asham. It was also narrated by Ahmad from his hadith, narrated by Salama bin Nufail. He said, verily the Uqr, the center of the land of the believers is Asham. Imam Tabarani in Al-Kabir, he narrates from Salama bin Nufail. He says, the Uqr of Darul Islam is Asham. Darul Islam is the land ruled by Islam. He says, the Uqr, the center of Darul Islam is Asham. And the explanation that is given here is that when he talks about the Uqr, or the center of the land of Darul Islam is Asham, is that Rasulullah ﷺ is narrating that the Uqr of Darul Islam is Asham. Some of the explanations that's given about this is that this is talking about the second coming. right? Because around here Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is already established Darul Islam. So why is he saying the Uqr of Darul Islam is the Sham? Because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is in Medina. So the explanation that is given here is that it's talking about the second coming, the second establishment of the state, the second Darul Islam, that the Uqr in the future will be in Sham. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and finally another hadith, this is narrated by Abu Dawud in Sunan, that Abdullah bin Amr, he says, there will be a hijrah after a hijrah. So the best people on earth are those who keep to the land of the hijrah of Ibrahim. What is the land of hijrah of Ibrahim? Sham. So here, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, so all of these hadith, they talk about a future that is coming. A future that is coming that is connected to Sham, that is connected to Masjid Al-Aqsa, that is connected to Bayt al-Maqdis. There are glad tidings in this. And then the final hadith, some of us may already be familiar with this, ثُمَّ تَكُونُ خِلَافَةٌ عَلَى مِنْهَاجِ النُّبُوَّةِ. Right? Then there will be a khilafah on the path of the prophethood. And it's narrated in Sunan Ahmad. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that just like Isra al-Mi'raj, where Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is taken from a dire situation and given glad tidings, and within a year we see that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam migrates to Medina, establishes a state, establishes an authority, establishes power, and he runs campaigns to liberate the whole of Hijaz and eventually spread towards Sham. The victory is coming. The liberation of Palestine, the liberation of Al-Aqsa, the liberation of Bayt al-Maqdis is there because it is a wa'da from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it is a narration, it is a prophecy that is given to us by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You have to have iman in this. It goes back to that initial lesson, right? The initial 2 points that I mentioned, that the issue of there is ease after hardship. Second, to have yaqeen, you have belief in the wa'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what this requires is not to wait for the Mahdi. Let's just be clear, okay? We're not going to leave this setting here thinking that I will believe in this wa'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I don't have to do anything because I'm going to wait for the Mahdi. That is not what the message is, okay? What the message here is, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam day and night was working to establish the hukm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was no rest for Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hence there is no rest for us. We're not sitting here waiting for this Mahdi to come. And many of just on a side note, the issue of the Mahdi when he comes, we don't know when he comes. So that means we cannot rest on the laurels of the Mahdi and say, we're just waiting for him. That's number one, right? Because the fard doesn't go away. Second, the issue is, the Mahdi actually comes and takes power from the current Imam, the current Khalifa of the time. So that is an indication that there will already be a Khilafah prior to the Mahdi coming. Okay, there's clear hadith on this. So that's the point here, is that out of all of this, what we can take from is that we have to have yaqeen in the wa'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is good that will come. There is good that will come. There is ease that will come. But what is required is to work for it. So the month of Rajab is a month for us to reflect on these events that have shaped our history. Whether it was Isra al-Mi'raj, Tabuk, the liberation of Jerusalem by Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, or the fall of the Khilafah. These major events have had an impact in our lives today. So do not think of this as some events that took in the past. They have no relevance. Rather, they are very relevant to what is occurring in our lives today, what is occurring in the situation in the lands of the Muslims and in the Muslim society in general. Right? So the final point that inshallah I'll end with and we'll open for some discussion is that this idea of the return of Jerusalem, return of Masjid Al-Aqsa under the authority of Islam, its liberation from occupation. This is a sawab for us to gain. The work to do that is something for us to gain. It is something that we cannot say, you know what, somebody else will take care of this. Because it is our responsibility as a Muslim ummah. And the way to do this, and we can have a little discussion after this on that, is that the idea of the Khilafah is the only viable solution. There is no other solution. The Ummah has tried everything from socialism to secularism, capitalism, whatever you may have it. The only solution that it hasn't tried is the solution of Islam. To implement the rule of Islam, to implement the Khilafah system, so that one, we fulfill the fard, and second, we liberate the Ummah from its oppression. وقولي قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. جزاكم الله خيرا.